With a new form of government and every seat up for grabs, Austin voters elected 2 new city council November 4th, 16 council and mayor to runoff elections. Tonight, beyond the rhetoric, their district and our city.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to Civic Summit, City Council Runoff Conversation, District 7, a joint production of KLRU, Leadership Austin, KUT, and the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life. I'm Jennifer Staten with KUT 90.5, Austin's NPR station. For the next 30 minutes, we'll be talking about leadership with the candidates for District 7, Jeb Boyd and Leslie Poole. This will be sort of like a job interview. You can think about it that way. We want to know what skills and qualities these two people would bring to Austin City Hall. And we do invite all of you to tweet along with us. Use the hashtag CivicSummitD7. District 7 is in North Central Austin. It runs between Mopac and North Lamar, starting at 45th Street. It crosses 183 with most of its northern border along Howard Lane. Small parts of the district hook up Dessau Road to the city limits. So let's get right to our candidates now. Jeb Boyd is an attorney activist. As an attorney, he's worked in various state offices. Jeb has always lived in District 7, including the Crestview and Brentwood neighborhoods. He now lives in Allendale. He served on a number of Austin boards and commissions. His opponent, Leslie Poole, has lived in Austin for 34 years, currently living in Rosedale. She has served on Austin Commission since the mid-1990s, as well as some Travis County committees. She is a member of the Executive Committee and is treasurer of Livable City. Thanks to both of you for being here. So the first question, which was shared with both of you before we got together this evening, what have you learned about yourself over the past 4 months of campaigning that will help you govern? And Jeb, we're going to start with you for your answer first.
Well, I've gotten really comfortable asking people for money, but really what I've learned is that there are a lot of people out there who really care about Austin, have a lot of great ideas and energy for the city that they're excited about sharing. So that what I've learned is that really, if you get stuck, if you have a question, if you feel lost, faced by a big problem, just start asking questions and asking around. And getting people into conversations, and the ideas are going to emerge. They're not always going to be great ideas, or the ultimate ideas, but at least get the conversation going.
Okay, Leslie.
One of the things I learned was that I was able to exist on very little food and not a whole lot of sleep. With the work that we've done with questionnaires and forums and everything. A lot of what I learned about myself in the campaign so far has just been the depth to which I'm able to reach out to the voters and hear them and have them respond. And there's an alignment of vision and values that I've been able to connect with the voters in District 7 and talk about the issues that matter to me, that matter to them, in a way to, as a collective moving forward for District 7 and for the city as a whole.
All right, so I want to walk you through a hypothetical situation and get your response to this. So here's the hypothetical. So there's pressure on the council as a whole to increase the budget for public safety because of an increase in crime, we'll say in 2 of the 10 new city council districts. Your district has not been affected, but you're feeling pressure from neighborhood groups to lobby for an increase in evening patrols. So this is kind of a 2-part question. So first, how would you work with APD to decide which districts get more officers? And then if that meant delivering unwanted news back to your own district and your own constituents, how would you communicate that choice to them? And Leslie, we'll start with you for this
Sure,
question.
happy to kick off on that one. I work in a law enforcement office currently for Travis County for the constable. And so I have some on-the-job insights into how officers and deputies are deployed. So the first part of your question, I would talk with APD about their deployment schedules and how the officers are integrated into the communities, and talk about the distribution and where the hot spots are to make sure that we have sufficient coverage. The second part of your question goes to if you don't have enough boots on the ground, what do you do then? We have really good communications in District 7 on issues relating to crime and a crime watch, neighborhood watch. So there are a lot of resources within communities to band together and augment the work that our public safety officers, that they do.
Jeb.
Well, first off, I would look to see what the APD's recommendation is to address the problem, the specific problem, and then see what additional resources might be needed, or where the gap is in terms of the budget and the funding and the needs for making sure we have the coverage. The second thing about this question is it touches on a sensitive issue that we've heard some concerns from folks in the neighborhoods, which is particularly during some of the major events where police are pulled out of the neighborhoods or coverage is limited and reduced in the neighborhoods, and folks are concerned about making sure that there is equal coverage. And so I would want to make sure to work with APD, the chief, and APD as a whole, to ensure that there is adequate coverage, and specifically to work with the sector commands and the folks covering the neighborhoods in District 7 to make sure that there is full coverage through there. And certainly communicate all of this out and as transparently as possible to the folks in the district. Communication, the communications and accountability are a key part of what I think the people are expecting as part of the new 10-1 system.
So I want to zero in on the second part of this question. That I know this was a long hypothetical. So let's kind of generalize the second part of the question then. If you had to deliver news to your constituents that they might not want to hear, or news that may be counter to the opinions that they've expressed to you that they would like see done, how would you, setting aside the hypothetical, but just in general, what skills would you bring to bear to work with them when you've got to deliver news that is maybe not what they want to hear? And Jeb, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, as an attorney, I've had to deliver bad news. I've had to tell clients sometimes when they've lost, or sometimes when what they want to do is just not quite possible. So I have some experience at doing that. But and then in this situation, the key thing is identifying the key people. The folks in the neighborhoods who have the greatest concerns, the greatest interest and experience on the issue, and make sure that they get the news, have a chance to ask questions and understand what's going on, and then try to disseminate the news more widely beyond there.
And Leslie.
Well, what I would say is this probably isn't like a one-off situation. This probably is something that has happened before. So I would hope that in advance we would be having these conversations to plan for if there were like an ACL or a South by where the police were being moved to areas where they're needed more greatly, that we're able to fill with additional patrols, have the coverage, and we have the neighborhood eyes on the street. And for me, it's a matter of communication, it's a matter of planning, and it's a matter of people understanding what to expect, and then how can we as a community fill in and ensure that people are safe. And I will also say that just because the police may be elsewhere, we do still have our fire and our EMS folks, and if there are issues of great concern, they would be dispatched to those areas. No one in Austin would be left injured or something. Our first responders would be right on it, right off.
All right, so we know the numbers tell us that there are many Austinites who don't vote in city elections, and they're kind of happy with the way things are, and they're not terribly engaged. So how would you explain to a non-voter why they should care about what happens at City Hall? And Leslie, if you want to take that one first.
The message would be crafted possibly differently depending on if we're talking to a new voter. maybe a student who lives in another town and is at UT, maybe a new homeowner or a new renter, or someone who has come from another state, or someone who's lived here a long time and just has never engaged. I think you can find the points of engagement with people through conversation. I think you find where their values are, the things that in their community that they care about, and have that, and start the dialogue on how is there something like streetlights, for instance, just pick something, or a traffic calming situation, and try to work in advance to get the processes in place to have an open door and just an open conversation, and make sure there's no judgment, that the public services that people want are there available for them, and we need to match them up more appropriately. Then you have a sense of buy-in, and which bonds a community together, and you communicate the message that this is a very special thing that we have in a democracy, voting. It carries great import, and the results of the accumulation of that vote, that huge community effort, is a voice of the community, and we speak together as voters, and we have an outcome. Sometimes we're happier with them than not, but it is still like a community activity.
And Jeb?
Well, I'm not sure, unfortunately, that some of those folks are actually happy. That's why they're not voting. I think some of those folks are actually probably pretty aggravated and disassociated based on some of the people I've run into and talked to. In fact, many of the people I've met in going around and knocking on doors in the district have expressed surprise that actually meeting someone, first time they've met candidates at all. So reaching out to engage people is a key part, a key aspect of the promise, certainly of the 10-1 system that we're looking at here. And to encourage people to vote, it's in many cases folks are not clear what the city does. They say, what does the city council do? And and it goes those fundamental things on your block. It's picking up your garbage. It's repairing the potholes. It's making sure do you have sidewalks to get from your house to the bus to the store to the library? Do you have a library nearby? Those key those municipal services that the city provides that sometimes people are not clear about. Engaging them in them, asking them about what of their needs are being met or not being met, where they have concerns. And getting them engaged in the conversation is how you, I think, eventually get them, lead them into the voting booth.
So that's an interesting point, Jeb, that some people are not clear on what the city council exactly does. So you mentioned some specifics, some kind of very specific things, but I'm interested to hear from both of you then sort of a little bit bigger picture, sort of what you see the role of the city council is in the life and health of the city. We know there's some very specific points that the council has to do and that must do every year, but kind of step back from those specifics and tell people what sort of you see the role of the council in the health and life of the city. And Jeb, if you want to go with that one first.
Well, the base, the key thing that the council does, the basic specifics, is the budget. The council sets the budget for the city, for all the departments and all the services and public infrastructure and everything that is provided. But then beyond that, as Leslie was alluding to a moment ago, the council is the voice of of the people. It's the chance. It is the the representative body that gets together and makes the decisions upon the operation of the city government, the providing of all the services that we do, building the infrastructure, maintaining the health, safety, and welfare of Austin, and making sure it remains such a great place to live as we all enjoy it. It is where we have these conversations, and not just to talk about them, but to actually make something happen, and hopefully continue to make sure that this is a great city.
And Leslie?
Well, simply building on what Jeb said so well, of course the budget being the policy document where we lay out our priorities for the community. And then on a larger stage, I see the council as leaders in moving the city forward and toward improvements in the quality of the services that we provide, reaching more of the vulnerable communities that we know we have so many of, but we didn't talk about them very much on the campaign trail previously. Making sure that our infrastructure that is failing in some places is repaired and replaced, that we look toward our water, our rare, precious depleting water supply, and making sure that we are able to provide enough water for the city to grow and to manage the growth in such a way that we don't overrun our infrastructure and our ability through our natural resources to provide the necessary elements for day-to-day living.
So it was a very busy fall election season. I don't have to tell you all that. There were a lot of debates, a lot of forums, a lot of panels. You all spent a lot of time together talking and answering questions. So I'm curious to hear from each of you something that you learned from your opponent in the general campaign. Leslie, if you want to go first.
Oh, yes. All 7 of the folks who were running with me in District 7 are so smart and so gracious and giving of the knowledge that they have of the city and their experiences. I just learned a lot about the people I was running with or against, all the other candidates in District 7. I learned to speak really succinctly in a minute. I think we all did. And I actually found myself in a forum where I was given more time and kind of like this, and it's like, okay, I get to actually expand a little bit more on my answers and maybe relax a little bit. But I was uniformly impressed with the quality of the dialogue that all of the candidates in District 7 race brought to the table.
Jeb.
Yeah. Well, the quality of the dialogue, the quality, and the overall commitment. I mean, it was really great. The 8 folks that were running in this race all really care about Austin. They all really want the city to succeed. They want it to be a great place. They want to really take on and address the challenges that are facing us, particularly affordability and transportation. And that was really great. And everyone came from a different perspective. And it was and brought different communities into the conversation in working this, and it was a great experience.
So District 7 has, I think we could describe it as a pretty large socioeconomic divide, and is seeing many low-income families with children leave that area and move to communities, Pflugerville, Hutto, Manor, and others. The district also struggles with traffic, as many do. Neither of those issues is unique to District 7. So I want to hear how you would work with other council members to deal with citywide issues in a way that ensures the solutions work for your constituents in District 7. Jeb, we'll start with you. For
Sure.
that one.
Well, I mean, that's certainly going to be one of the big challenges. And collaborating, working with other council members, and as you said, on citywide issues. So many of the votes and things that the councils do really are citywide matters and concerns, but particularly when you get into the social equity questions, getting into the questions that concern affordability and making sure folks have access to good jobs, safe routes to schools, libraries, and other public services. Some of that is broad citywide matters that hopefully we can find agreement on, and certainly go out. And have the chance to talk with other council members, hear how those concerns are manifesting perhaps differently in their districts than in District 7, and making sure that we can put programs together that are going to work citywide to benefit everyone. Tougher challenges are going to be when we have to, whereas with libraries and parks and other facilities, we're actually building things and spending money in the different districts, and we're going to have to be some balancing and horse trading there, I think.
And Leslie.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is the district representatives will be the unique voice to articulate what the needs are of the specific district to the larger body of the council, and to that end would need to persuade and sell some ideas, and we would need to look at priorities. And it could be that, just to take a a library as an example, there may be one library that is in worse shape than another one, and the budget is only going to allow repairs to one of them. And so it would be, I would hope there'd be a consensus that we really are looking at the city as a whole, and while we support what our districts need individually, we all have an opportunity to get the services and the improvements that we need. And when you do a prioritization, that is incumbent in that process, that we may be moving forward here in District 7 on this one item while we're helping District 4 in this item over here. And just one word on, I mentioned vulnerable communities to me. That is, earlier, that to me is a very key element of what the city does. And that to me is a concern for the entire community, that everyone who lives here has access to safe housing and a good education and is healthy. And that all leads to a good, healthy workforce, and it supports our economic development throughout the city. So those larger overarching issues, along with affordability and transportation, are very important to me.
All right, I want you to each imagine it's rush hour. You're starting north and you're heading south, so you're going to be in the car for a while. I want you to tell me if you could put 3 people in that car with you and be stuck with them in the car during rush hour from north to south, who would those 3 people be, and what would you want to talk about with them on your ride?
Okay, Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld, and who's a good woman comic? I'm just blanking, but you get the point.
Silverman.
Yes, exactly, Sarah Silverman. Thank you.
Yeah.
So would you talk city issues or just have them tell jokes?
You know what? I think both things would happen. I think it would be hugely enlightening, and I just love Larry David's total wry sense of humor. And the thing is, I'm not sure who'd be driving.
Oh, good point. Good point, good point. And Jeb?
Well, normally have KUT on in the car, so, but yeah, that's three people, in the car and going that route. I think I'd probably, as long as we're, community doing that like that, I'd like to have a real conversation about transportation. And the challenges about getting around in the city and going north to south. So in that regard, I would probably like to have the mayor, who that may be, county judge, who and likely chair of the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, Sarah Eckhart, and Linda Watson, the Capital Metro chair, or president. ED, and to have a good discussion about so this is what it's like on the streets, and this is the conflicts we're all dealing with, and what can we do to make it better.
Well, our time has gone by more quickly than a drive from north to south. Austin, I think we're at the end of our time. Just a final question, and if I just get a very brief, maybe 1-sentence answer from each of you. At the end of your term, what is the biggest mark you would like to leave on the district? And Jeb, we'll start with you.
I would really like to look at the area in the Burnett Gateway area from the ACC Northridge to the Domain, the Kramer Lane Station, the Arboretum, and really improve pedestrian, bicycle, access and transit access through that area, so that folks up there are really able to easily move through the area and have real transportation choices as they go about their daily trips.
And Leslie.
And for me, I'd like to improve access to parks, pools, and libraries, particularly in the area north of the Burnett Gateway intersection and all the way across from Balcones Woods over to I-35. Folks up there desperately need additional green space and additional city services along those lines, and I'm committed to making that happen. And that's the mark I would like to leave.
Well, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks to both of you, Jeb Boyd and Leslie Poole. All of the runoff conversations and our conversation with the newly elected candidates for Districts 2, 5, and 9 will be available on YouTube. Early voting in the runoff election will start December 1st. Election Day is December 16th. For KLRU, Leadership Austin, the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life, and KUT, I'm Jennifer Staten. Thank you so much for watching.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.
With a new form of government taking shape at City Hall and every seat up for grabs, Austin voters elected 2 new city council members on November 4th and sent 16 council candidates, plus 2 vying for Austin mayor, to runoff elections. Tonight, beyond the rhetoric, we ask the remaining candidates what makes them the right person to lead their district and our city.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for Civic Summit, City Council Runoff Conversation District 8, a joint production of KLRU, Leadership Austin, KUT, and the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life. I'm Jennifer Staten with KUT 90.5, Austin's NPR station. Our discussion tonight will focus on leadership and will be sort of like a job interview. We want to know what skills and qualities each candidate would bring to City Hall. My guests this half hour are running in District 8, Ed Scruggs and Ellen Troxclair. And we invite all of you to tweet along with us. Please use the hashtag CivicSummitD8. District 8 is in southwest Austin. It runs mostly west of Mopac, starting south of Rollingwood. It's centered around the Y at Oak Hill. It extends south to the Hays County line. Some parts of the district are in Hays County. On my left is Ed Scruggs. Ed has lived in Austin for 10 years. He is the founder of the Circle C Area Democrats and calls himself a neighborhood activist. Running against him is Ellen Troxclair. Ellen is a realtor and small business owner. She began her career working in public policy at the state capitol. And thanks so much to both of you for being here tonight. So the first question for you, which was shared with both of you beforehand, I want to hear what you have learned about yourself over these past 4 months of campaigning that will help you govern. And Ed, we'll start with you for that one.
That will help me govern, I would say. I have more stamina than I could ever imagine, and that this is my true calling. I think working with people in the community, talking to them, listening to them, and acting with them. I always knew that that was a big part of my life, but now it's a part of my life to stay. The drive and energy, it just feeds upon itself. I can't get enough of it because I'm so eager to help folks in the community. I'm thinking of election night. Last Tuesday, I was on my feet for 20 hours, and it was exhausting, but it was the best 20 hours I've ever had. I think it's changed my life for the better, and I look forward to governing.
And Ellen?
Well, I think if you had asked me or told me 7 or 8 months ago that I would ever run for public office, I would have not believed you, because it's never been a personal political ambition of mine to be an elected official, although I've enjoyed being involved in the community and multiple other organizations. So that has been a surprise to me in and of itself, that here I am several months later and being, coming in first place at the election. And I got in this race, I ultimately got motivated to get in this race because I have always looked forward to raising my family in Austin. And my husband and I got to the point where a lot of our conversations started to revolve around the question of whether or not we're going to be able to afford to do that. And so that's what ultimately motivated me to get into the race. And I was so amazed and happy to find out how many people in Southwest Austin felt the same way and have joined our campaign, and look forward to having a taxpayer advocate on City Council. So that would be the biggest shock to, or surprise, or thing that I've learned about myself, and I look forward to bringing that voice for taxpayers to City Council.
All right, so I want to run you two through a hypothetical and get your response to a couple questions about that. So here's the hypothetical. So there's pressure on the council as a whole to increase the budget for public safety because of an increase in crime in 2 of the 10 districts. Now, your district has not directly been affected, but you're feeling pressure from neighborhood groups to lobby for increased evening patrol. So the questions: how would you work with APD to decide which districts get more officers. And then if that means delivering to your district what might be unwanted news, maybe news that they don't want to receive, how would you go about communicating that choice back to your constituents? And Ellen, we'll start with you for this one.
Great question. Well, I think a common theme throughout this campaign has been a need for better communication, whether it's better communication between city council members and constituents, or between city council members and the different interest groups, or very important organizations like our police and firemen who serve our city so well. So the first step is reaching out to them, sitting down and having that conversation with them, learning all of the facts, and working together to make an informed decision. And, you know, although we want to do what's best for the city as a whole, it is my job to be an advocate for Southwest Austin. So I'm absolutely going to represent that district's needs while having those conversations with an open mind, and then communicating that effectively with my constituents, always having an open door policy, always letting them know what decisions are being made and the logic behind those decisions.
And Ed?
Well, it's a great question because it brings up the public safety aspect and the budget aspect. They're linked. Public safety is about 70% of the general fund budget, so that's a great question. I think part of the way we handle this is first we get a handle on what is in the budget, where we're having police coverage, for example, and rightfully so, it's going to be focused in the higher crime areas. And I can think of the Runberg area in North Austin, for example. Those folks need help up there and they deserve it. Now, if they needed more help, if what we were doing there wasn't working, we have an obligation to ask why. Are we focusing on community policing? Are there tactics that we can use that will help? Is it just a manpower problem, or are there other things that we can do? Down in my district, in District 8, people have an interest in public safety, of course. We've had a rise in property crimes, car thefts, break-ins, vandalism. And some people may not think that is a big problem, but trust me, it is. I've had my back window of my van shot out twice within a 6-week period before the holiday once, and it cost thousands of dollars. So a lot of damage does occur. I think working with APD to focus on property crimes and burglaries, they need more resources in that area, obviously, and develop a long-term plan and tailor police coverage to the needs of each district. If we're doing that, the absolute manpower aspect won't matter as much, because if we're doing everything we can with the manpower allotted in the districts, then we'll be able to meet needs. And I think working with APD, we can do that.
All right. The numbers tell us we know that there are many Austinites who don't vote in city elections. So I'm curious to hear how each of you would explain to a non-voter why they should care about what happens at City Hall. And Ed, if you want to take that one
I've
first.
met many of those non-voters during the campaign, and one of the great things about 10-1 and the great things about this campaign is folks in the Southwest were not engaged with city politics on average. They were upset, perhaps, because there were things they didn't like, but they're so far removed from the core of the city that they can live their lives and just not think much about city government. So when we're going door to door and knocking, I found myself often educating folks and answering their questions about how the city works. Folks didn't know, for example, that EMS was separate from fire, or what the police coverage was, or what the crime rates were. So I think this process is going to bring people together and engage them. Now, we might have to bring some of them kicking and screaming, because this is Texas and it's a non-voting state, and we have a culture, unfortunately, that we need to press hard and improve our civic engagement. This is one way that we can do that. One other factor, I think, is establishing district offices so we're accessible to our people, that they don't have to come all the way downtown and fight the traffic and the hours, et cetera. And that would be a budget-conscious way, using existing facilities that have extra space, no new construction, but just have some regular hours where folks can come in, contact us, maybe meet a staff member, and just share their concerns. So we bring the government to them. I think we have an obligation to do that as well.
And Ellen?
Well, I have been honored to be a part of this new district system that I think in and of itself has had a huge impact in our civic engagement in Southwest Austin. I'll tell you, one of the most amazing people throughout this campaign was a woman who one of my volunteers called while they were making phone calls to tell people about our campaign. And she told my volunteer that she had never voted before. She was 100% blind, and she had never made it to the polls. And after talking to my volunteer about the city council election and why it's so important, she asked her mom to drive her to the poll and to take her to vote for the first time. And we ran into her actually as she was walking in to vote, and she said, "I'm coming to vote for the first time in my life because I wanted to make sure and cast my vote for you." And that had such an incredible impact on me because I felt like already we're making such a difference by just being out there and being a representative for Southwest Austin. I think past that, you know, a reason that we haven't been so engaged in the first place is because we have felt very overlooked by the current city council. A lot of Southwest Austinites feel like we have the highest rate of homeownership. We're footing the bill for a lot of the city services, and we're not seeing a return on that investment in the form of road infrastructure and public safety resources. So I think in order to change that, they have to know that somebody is listening. They have to know that somebody is being held accountable. They have to know that when they write an email or when they make a phone call, there's someone on the other end who's going to give them a response and who's going to take their thoughts into consideration. And that's the kind of public servant that I want to be.
So kind of a question related to 10-1 and the new council setup. So as this district representation takes hold in Austin, this will be the first council elected under this system, people may start to identify even more with the district or the region where they are. And you were saying that seemed especially true in District 8 perhaps. So I'm curious to hear from you what you see as maybe some risks, but also maybe some opportunities associated with people maybe thinking of themselves more as being part of a district rather than part of a city. And Ellen, if you want to take that one first.
Well, I think the biggest opportunity is I think it will motivate them to get engaged. I think that they will feel like while under the current city council, a lot of our smaller neighborhood issues have been overlooked. They're going to have someone who lives in that neighborhood who understands what they're going through and who is going to be able to have a phone conversation with them, have a meeting in the district with them. I think the risks of the system, and that's something that we've talked about throughout the campaign, is you don't want to make it all about you at the expense of the entire city as a whole. And in order to overcome that, I think you start with although each district has very unique needs, we share some very important common themes like cost of living, like property taxes, like traffic. And it doesn't matter what part of the city you live in, those things are affecting your constituents. So I think it'll be important for every city council member, regardless of what district they are from, to start with the issues that we really have commonalities and kind of branch out from there.
And Ed?
Well, I think there's an upside and a downside, of course, but I think the positives far outweigh the negatives. District 8 needs an identity. We've said Oak Hill or Southwest Austin for so long. Well, what does that mean? And it turns out it's actually a very diverse area, starting from Zilker Park all the way down Mopac to the south end. And so there are different neighborhoods with different needs. A West Creek, for example, or a Scenic Brook is very different from a Circle C or a Village as a Western Oaks. So there are identities within the district that also need to be tended to, as a matter of fact. But I think the issue of commonalities, the city is really at a critical point, a historic point. The affordability issue strikes everyone across the city in different ways. Everyone has that in common. In our district, the primary factor is property taxes, which hit people very hard. We have the highest rate of home ownership in the city as a percentage. But everyone can relate to that feeling of, what am I going to do? Am I going to be able to stay here? It happens even in our district. So we have that. Transportation is a common issue. Everyone has to get from point A to point B, and sometimes point C, and it's taking longer. So we have many common issues. And what I also try to impress upon people is, you may not think some of these issues affect us, but they do. School district, for example, AISD and their budget problems and educational problems. Primary factor, 52%, I believe, of the property tax bill comes from AISD. And that is a problem that affects everyone. The district almost overlays through the entire city limits. So we have district-wide, city-wide, region-wide issues that any council member needs to focus on and should be able to explain to the folks in their district why this is important to us, because we all pay for that.
So I don't have to tell you all, this was a very busy fall election season, a lot of forums, a lot of debates. You all spent a lot of time together. This is obviously not the first time you've been on the stage together. So I'm curious to hear from each of you what you've learned from your opponent during this process. Ed, if you want to take that one.
Well, and I'll be very
first.
truthful. I know from Ellen I've learned the value of endless energy and passion. She doesn't stop and keeps moving, and I think that's important in any candidate, and I try to emulate that myself. I think that was one thing that we both had in common, is that had very energetic campaigns out there in the community, but also too from our other candidates. We had an excellent field of 5 candidates, and from my unbiased opinion, I thought we had one of the best fields in the city. Every one of us, we were very qualified, and we brought something very different to the table. We had different issues of expertise, transportation, management styles, experience. And so these forums that we attended were actually learning opportunities. I learned a great deal. And actually we would have forums where we would have combined forums with other districts, those were my favorite, because you got a little sampling of all across the city, and we talked about those commonalities. Those commonalities would come out in those discussions, but the approaches to handle them were different. So it was very enlightening.
And Ellen.
Yeah, well, I do think that we had one of the strongest fields in the entire city. Every candidate in this race brought a true strength and a true unique perspective. And we heard multiple times, I wish you guys were all running for different things so that we could vote for you all. And that was very flattering. And it's a great thing for Southwest Austinites to have that kind of choice that to choose from. And I have enjoyed this experience with Ed immensely. We have spent, like you said, many days and nights together, and I think we have grown to have a mutual respect for each other, even though we may differ in our approaches to the role of city government. I think that at the end of the day, Austinites want us to all be able to work together for the betterment of our city, and I hope we can continue this relationship farther past this election, because I think we both have unique things to offer.
Yeah. So District 8 has a number of large and sometimes vocal homeowners associations. And I'm curious if you can describe your conversations with those groups during the campaign and how you would work to keep them sort of included and engaged if you're elected. And Ellen, if you want to take that one first.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the great things about Southwest Austin is we have a very family-centered district. We do have the highest rate of homeownership, and the homeowners associations, truly care about maintaining their quality of life. And we've gone to countless homeowners association meetings and also had forums there. And I think they were excited to see, I think that was probably the first time that they've ever had city council candidates speaking at homeowner association meetings. So they're excited to finally know who to call when they have an issue. They have very, like I said earlier, specific neighborhood needs. One neighborhood is concerned with sidewalks. One neighborhood is concerned with having brush cleared from their green belt. One neighborhood is concerned with having their potholes filled. And those are things that they feel like they have been overlooked in the current city government structure. And that's the kind of, so in order to keep them engaged, I think you have to continue to be accessible. They have my cell phone number, they have my personal email address. They're always going to know how to get a hold of me and how to let me know the needs that they're facing in their communities.
Ed.
Well, I think one of the things that I've been able to draw upon is I had experience as a director and president of Circle C HOA back 7-8 years ago, and that was a critical time for that neighborhood. We were reforming the HOA and taking it over from the developer and transferring to homeowner control, and that's a very large homeowners association, and there's a big difference between a homeowners association and a neighborhood association or an apartment association, and it's important to understand that difference. Homeowners associations can be great partners for the city if that relationship is handled well. The homeowners associations are often willing to take on some of the duties, maintenance duties, for example, that the city may not want, and so they can help us save money and the residents can be happy. They're very good partners in terms usually of making strides in water conservation. The residents are great at crime prevention programs and so forth, so they're very engaged within their community, so that's important. But it's also important, we have situations where you might have a Circle C or a Western Oaks butting up just across the highway from a Maple Run, which is a working class community where they don't have mandatory HOA dues. And that's a very different situation over there where folks are voluntarily paying into the system, and then when the families age and the parents age and move out, sometimes those neighborhood associations have no money at all. And so they require a complete different level of engagement. But because we're all there in the same region, our kids go to the same schools, we all drive on the same roads, and so it's important to understand how the different types of neighborhoods in the district relate, and I think I have that experience.
All right, so I want you to each imagine it's rush hour, you're in North Austin, but you have to get home. So you know you're going to be in the car for a while heading from north to south during rush hour. If you could put 3 people in that car with you, who would you put and what would you talk about with them? Ed, if you want to take that one first.
Well, I'm assuming it'd be a very long conversation, so I'd have to entertain myself. I am a political junkie, so Chuck Todd, for example, from MSNBC, we could talk about elections and the minutiae of voting patterns and so forth. Jimmy Fallon, we might play a few games in the car, and Bruce Springsteen, because I'm sure that would be, he'd just unleash some pearls of wisdom that have had a positive influence on my life from the time I was about 14. So that'd be a pretty entertaining conversation, and I'd learn a few things along the way.
And Ellen?
All right, so anyone past or present, I would say I would love to be stuck in a car with Margaret Thatcher and pick her brain. I think she was an amazing woman and broke a lot of barriers, so I'd be interested to have a long conversation with her. I would say to take his lead on a musician, maybe someone like Ryan Adams, who my husband and I recently saw at ACL Live, and he was just an amazing musician and would love to learn more about him. And I think third, I would have to say my husband, because we haven't gotten to spend a whole lot of time together over the past several months, and I miss him.
Well, our time has gone by very quickly, faster than that ride from North Austin to South Austin. So we've come to the end of our time. I do have one last question for you.
Sure.
At the end of your term, what is the biggest mark you would like to have left on the district? And Ellen, if you want to take that one first.
I think the biggest mark from a policy standpoint, I'm really passionate about giving Austinites some relief when it comes to affordability. I want to see a 20% city homestead exemption passed. I want to see us getting a handle on our budget and reducing the tax rate so that people can afford to raise families in this city. And from a personal perspective, I want to know that I accomplished my goal of being a servant leader, of never forgetting that my bosses are the 80,000 constituents that live in District 8. I work for them and not the other way around, and that I have always approached this job from the perspective of how can I serve them the best.
And Ed?
I think 2 things, they may not sound like they're related, but they are affordability, the viability of homeownership. The district does have economic diversity right now. We have some working class areas, we have upper middle class and higher income areas, but that diversity is depleting rapidly, and the property tax issue is a main driver of that. I also favor a 20% homestead exemption and other things that we can do. We have to do something. It's a crisis. So keeping people in their homes, but ultimately at the end of the day, We need to survive this storm of growth that we're enduring. We're on the front lines in Southwest, and we need to preserve our quality of life. It doesn't do any good to preserve the viability of home ownership if your quality of life is depleting. We have beautiful open spaces. It is, in my view, the most beautiful area in the city and in Central Texas, and that's a charge to keep. So we have a balance that we have to walk to keep people in their homes and also protect the quality of life that we have, and that's going to be the major challenge over the next decade, I think.
Well, that is all the time we have for tonight. Thanks to both of you, Ed Scruggs and Ellen Troxclair.
Thank you.
All of the runoff conversations and our conversation with the newly elected candidates for Districts 2, 5, and 9 will be available on YouTube. Early voting in the runoff election starts December 1st. Election Day is December 16th. For KLRU, Leadership Austin, the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life, and KUT, I'm Jennifer Staten. Thank you so much for watching.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.
With a new form of government taking shape at City Hall and every seat up for grabs, Austin voters elected 2 new city council members on November 4th and sent 16 council candidates, plus 2 vying for Austin mayor, to runoff elections. Tonight, beyond the rhetoric, we ask the remaining candidates what makes them the right person to lead their district and our city.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for Civic Summit, City Council Runoff Conversation District 4, a joint production of KLRU, Leadership Austin, KUT, and the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life. I'm Michael Kanan, publisher of the Austin Monitor. Our discussion tonight will focus on leadership and will be sort of like a job interview. Okay.
You have to stop. That was the wrong prompter. I'm sorry.
With a new form of government, the mayor, to run off elections. Tonight, beyond the rhetoric, we ask the remaining candidates what makes them the right person to lead their district and our city.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for Civic Summit, City Council Runoff Conversation District 10, a joint production of KLRU, Leadership Austin, KUT, and the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life. I'm Michael Kanan, publisher of the Austin Monitor. Our discussion tonight will focus on leadership and will be sort of like a job interview. We want to know what skills and qualities each candidate would bring to Austin City Hall. For the next 30 minutes, I'll be speaking with candidates in the running to represent District 10, Mandy Deely and Sherry Gallo. If you'd like to join the conversation on Twitter, please use hashtag CivicSummitD10. District 10 is in West Austin, stretches north to 183 and south to Lady Bird Lake. It includes all of the neighborhoods west of Mopac and part of Rosedale east of Mopac. Most of its western border is in the county boundaries. Mandy Deely is a longtime community advocate. She's worked on 6 City of Austin boards, commissions, and task forces. She has chaired or vice-chaired a number of them. She is also involved with the board of a number of community organizations. Sherry Gallo is a real estate broker and small business owner. She chaired the City of Austin Housing Authority and has been a resident of Austin for over 50 years. Thanks both of you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
First question, which we shared with both of you before tonight. What have you learned about yourself over the last 4 months of campaigning, and that will help you govern? Mandy, you go first.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for having this tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. At this point in my life, I think I know myself pretty well. I've done a lot of introspection and think I know myself. But really, what I remembered about myself is that I love community service. It is absolutely my passion. And the opportunity to get involved again with the issues that are so important, talk about them, explain them to voters and Austinites has really been exciting, and I have loved doing it.
Sherry?
And thank you once again for allowing us to be here and giving people an opportunity to once again look at the candidates and hear their voices. It's been an interesting process. I've always thought of myself as a people person. I'm in real estate. My business for the last 35 years has been finding and helping people get into homes. And you do that as connecting with people. But what I have been amazed with is how much I really, really, really enjoy doing that. The connection with people and the ability to be accessible and let them know that you will listen to them and talk to them. I think that is one of the leadership qualities that's really important for this district type of leadership. And over and over again, from going to the football games, passing out our bubbles, going to the school carnivals, just walking neighborhoods, it's really expanding on that connection that I've enjoyed so much and really been proud of myself for.
Okay.
So thank you.
We're going to start with a hypothetical here. There is pressure on the council as a whole to increase the budget for public safety because of an increase in crime in 2 of the 10 districts. Your district hasn't been directly affected, but you're feeling pressure from neighborhood groups to lobby for increased evening patrol. How will you work with APD to decide which districts get more officers? If that means delivering unwanted news back to your district, how will you communicate that to your constituents? Sherry, you go first.
So I hear 2 questions there. First of all, the public safety budget is a large portion of the general fund budget. I think that you learn by asking questions of the experts. So I would want to ask questions and listen to the people at APD and understand where they feel like the resources need to be and communicate that back to my neighborhoods and my community. I think it's important also to encourage people to become responsible for being assistants with the police department. I think they need to be ears and eyes out in their neighborhoods. We need to help them learn how to do that, be comfortable to do that, but it's a responsibility that we as citizens have too. We can't just depend on the police force entirely. We have to take responsibility ourselves. Going back to the neighborhood with information that perhaps is what they don't want to hear, you know, I think it goes back to communicating. And I think if you built a relationship with your district and with the people in the communities and the neighborhoods in that district, and they know you're honest and they know you're thoughtful and that you listen to their concerns, it's like being a parent that delivers bad news. You have to do it and it's your responsibility to do it. But if there's a trusting relationship that goes with that, I think it makes it much easier to do.
Okay, Mandy?
Much along the same lines, I think that well, first of all, I have a really good relationship with public safety entities. But it really is almost a matter of working with the city manager to direct the police and public safety entities to do their work. It's not so much a council matter. So the important thing would be to work with the city manager to make sure that APD is doing its job and is putting patrolmen and officers where they need to be. District 10 has been fortunate in that we don't have the kind of really major crimes that a lot of the districts do, but we have seen a huge increase in property crimes, and making sure that there are patrols that will help watch out for that, encouraging community policing and for neighbors to watch out for each other is really going to be important, especially if the resources have to go to another district. Working with the district to make sure that they understand the responsibility and the power that they have to address those problems is going to be very important.
Okay. District 10 has arguably held sway, portions of the new District 10 has arguably held a lot of sway over the city council for a long time. Many in West Austin voted against the move to single-member districts, as I'm sure you guys are aware. What have you heard on the campaign trail about that general opinion? But more importantly, how will that, do you think, impact the way you reconcile interests between your district and the city as a whole? I believe, Mandy, you go first.
That will be a challenge because District 10 has traditionally had more influence and also has been responsible for electing a large number of the city council members. So being sure that the district needs are addressed and taken care of is going to be really important. But you know, when I would talk to people, everybody I talked to was pretty glad to see that we have single-member districts now. In the more central part of Austin, I don't think were as enthusiastic about it, south of 2222. But when I would talk to folks north of 2222, which is the largest geographic portion of the district, everybody seemed really excited and enthusiastic and engaged and looking forward to the opportunity to have a stronger voice at City Hall.
Okay, Sherry?
I think there is a portion of the district that has been served, but I think there's a large portion of the district that really does feel like they are underserved, and that would be the north and the westernmost sections. So as we walked neighborhoods and talked to people and had events, I mean, I heard a very clear message that there was a lot of enthusiasm about this new process, because I think those areas of District 10 now felt like that they would be represented. The advantage to District 10 and the people that live in District 10 is you have a very engaged, wonderfully involved community that is involved in nonprofits and community organizations whose purpose is to touch the other areas of Austin. So it is a population that is very unselfish in the willingness to have funds and spend funds and time to other parts of the city. And I think across the board, District 10 understands that it's the city as a whole that's important, and they want to help with that.
Okay. You each have, obviously, you ran for office and you've run for office before. Sherry, Mandy, you've served on a number of boards and commissions, as we noticed at the top. You've each formed, obviously, your own political opinions, your own ideologies. Under what circumstances would you be willing to compromise some of those as you lead the city if you get this position? Sherry, we start with you.
Well, I think leadership is compromise. I think that when we see problems in government, it's because the parties aren't agreeing to compromise and aren't willing to listen to other people. Just because we disagree doesn't mean we're not good people and we don't have good intentions. And I think this particular process, where we have 11 council members, 10 members that are from vastly different areas of town and have different needs, they represent people of different economic and social interest. It's going to be really important for the leaders that are on the council to understand that we have to work together. And building that consensus and working together, I think, is going to be very key to the council in this new single-member district plan to be successful.
Okay, Mandy.
Well, I'm absolutely committed to collaboration and making sure that all the stakeholders are at the table with a voice and that everybody is listened to. In Austin, we sometimes listen to constituents, acknowledge them, but then make decisions that don't include them. So I think that being able to make people understand how important their input is and to make sure that they understand that they really are being listened to and that their positions and interests are being taken into consideration is going to be really important. Fortunately, having served on as many boards and commissions as I have and as many nonprofits that serve a number of different areas of town, I have a pretty good sense of where the problems are in Austin and what some of the needs are. So I'm hoping that will give me an advantage as we start collaborating and talking about how we're going to resolve things.
Okay. If you could put 3 people in a car, and we all know about cars and traffic, and have them drive from North Austin to South Austin at peak rush hour, who would it be? Mandy, you go first.
Oh, gee. I have 3 really good friends I would love to put in the car.
Okay.
Sarah Bird and Sandra Kirk and Sharon Coleman. And it would be an absolute joy to be able to spend time with these really bright women talking about things that are important and things that are not important. But being able to just spend time with friends. It's something I have missed in this campaign. I miss my friends.
Okay. Sherry?
You know, that's easy. There's so many fascinating people that it would be wonderful to be locked in with. But you know, I have to say, those of us that are engaged in the community and busy doing volunteer work and busy with our businesses, a lot of times it's our families that are neglected. Certainly during this campaign, I would put my husband in that car. Normally we spend a lot of time together, but it would be fun to just reconnect there. But absolutely, I would put both of my grown children in the car. I mean, my days, my memories when they were young, and we had carpool, and they were captured in the car, and we had to have discussions, or I was able to hear what they were talking about. Those are wonderful days, and they're great kids, and just, you know, I miss having the time and them having the time to be able to talk.
Okay. Okay. As we know, some of the incoming council members are going to draw the short straw and have to run again in 2 years. What will each of you do if you draw a 2-year council term? How will that change the way that you govern? Sherry, you're first.
If we draw the 2-year term?
Yeah.
You know, that's really a short period of time, and I think a lot of it is that so many of the council members have not served before, which is a good thing. I mean, I think we're all ready for change and we're ready for new faces and new voices, but there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve there. And so part of the time early on is going to be spent getting up to speed, and I think there are a lot of projects and reviews that all of us have talked about on the campaign trail that have been some of the decisions that have been made recently on the council that we really want to take a look at. So it's going to be kind of a high-speed philosophy and thought process that goes along. There's just not going to be a lot of time to get things done. So I think, you know, full speed ahead and a lot of attention to really good ideas and that communication, building that up very quickly. But we've been working hard and fast in this campaign, and certainly during this period. So I think we'll be ramped up to go pretty quickly.
Okay, saw a lot of nodding there, Mandy.
Well, actually, I don't think much would change.
Okay.
I would want to do in 2 years what I would do in 4, which is try and build consensus, make sure that there's transparency at City Hall, include stakeholders in decisions. And so whether I would do that for 2 years and then run for re-election or do it for 4, I don't really think it'll make much difference.
Okay.
So I'm not worried about that.
Okay. This isn't the first time you've been here, certainly not the first time you've been in a forum with me, in front of these folks. What have you learned from your opponent? What?
Sherry has a lot of good ideas that I have learned from. We are very different in our approaches, and I think in the way we would manage and make decisions. But I appreciate the thought that she gives to her decision making. I'm interested in learning about her real estate company. I don't really know very much about real estate. I've been spending most of my time on boards and commissions and nonprofit boards, and haven't really spent much time getting to know the sorts of things that Sherry's been involved in. Okay. So I look forward to doing that more.
Okay, Sherry.
You know, we were so fortunate in District 10, and I know other districts have said the same thing, but we had an amazing group of candidates, articulate, thoughtful, intelligent, and we spent a lot of time together at forums. You know, it seems like it was 30 plus that we were there. And as you make the decision to run for office and you build your area of expertise and your knowledge, you know, there is so much that you have to learn to be a viable candidate and be a knowledgeable candidate. And every forum I would sit in, I would hear new information and new ideas and new solutions from each of the other candidates. And there was just so much that was learned from all of them. And it's been a wonderful process, and I count them as friends and hope that we will stay connected, because it was just a really good, great group of people.
Okay. You hear it again and again. A tale of two Austins, right? Some council members will represent the haves, some the have-nots. Some districts will be a mix of both. What can you learn from other council members and their constituents to help the city as a whole? Sherry?
Well, I think part of it is it goes back to leadership and what things I have done in the past that I will bring to the table as a council member. And I think taking those leadership roles that are in organizations that cover all of Austin has given me the knowledge of what other people need and what services we can provide and how to do that best. I've heard that voice, and I've been involved with every part of Austin. My career has been in real estate. I sell houses and help people find homes, and I go wherever my clients want me to go, and that means for the last 35 years I have been in every neighborhood in Austin. So because of that, I'm familiar with all of Austin, and I think that expertise, not only from being in my district for so long, being born here and being here over 50 years, but having that input and impact and connection to the rest of the community is really important.
Okay, Mandy.
Would you repeat the question? Just so I can get it
Sure.
clear.
Tale two Austins is what we're
Right.
getting at here. Some council members are going to represent the folks who have, some the folks who don't, and some will be a mix of both. What will you learn from the other council members and their constituents to help the city as a whole?
We really do have a huge economic divide in Austin, and I'm hoping that as a council we can look at that and try and find ways to diminish it. I have been able to spend time in lots of different parts of town working on different things. I was on the Community Action Network, which is now the Community Advocacy Network, for a number of years, served on the Community Foundation Board, have spent a lot of time trying to make lives better in Austin all over town. And so I think I have a pretty good idea of what some of the problems are, and I really look forward to talking to the representatives from the other districts to find out their perspectives and how they think that we can improve the lives of those folks.
Okay, let's talk for a minute about regionalism. You guys are going to be from a district that is as far-flung as it gets when we're talking about these districts. How are you going to, what leadership skills will you use as you get on regional entities, Campo, that sort of thing? Mandy, you're up first.
I think the same leadership skills that I hope to employ at the council. It's a matter of talking to people, finding out their points of view, their needs, and making sure that their voices are heard. And we have got to collaborate regionally. It doesn't do any good for Austin to have wonderful plans or water conservation or transportation solutions if we can't extend those to the surrounding communities. They need to buy into the same values and goals that we have, and working with them to make sure that that happens is going to be absolutely critical, because Austin can't be successful if the region is not successful.
Okay, Sherry?
I agree with that, and I think that we need to remember that we're not the island, in the state, that we are impacted by all the cities, all the areas around us, and there does need to be collaboration and communication between all of the entities. Once again, it goes back to, as Mandy said, listening, asking the questions, taking that process and going back to the community to talk about it. I just think that that's really important for us to be able to do, and to have impact both from Austin out and also out into Austin, and really listen and learn from others. We have a tendency to try to reinvent the wheel, but we can look at other places that have experienced the same issues we have, learned from their mistakes. That's one of the advantages about being a native Austinite and living here so long, is I've been able to be here long enough to understand and see the results of both the good and bad decisions. When the council makes a decision, it's often a decade before what the decision is implemented and actually serves the population. And I think the historical view of that is really important for thoughtful decision making.
You both touched on an interesting issue there. Mandy, you talked about plans. Sherry, you talked about the time it takes for Austin to implement something. Let's, for a minute, accept the idea that Austin is a city of a lot of plans on shelves. How will you lead to make some of those plans a reality? Sherry, you're up first.
One of the things that we heard, or that I heard as we walked neighborhoods and talked to people and had events and invited and listened at the forums, was there's such a frustration now with the length of time and the amount of time and the amount of money it takes to get anything through the city process. And so I think we need to have some very high expectations from the city manager that our departments are run efficiently and effectively, and always have in mind being conscious of spending the tax dollar wisely. And so there's a lot of places that I think we need to work on as far as an efficiency of departments.
Okay, Mandy?
Well, that frustration is one of the things that inspired me to run for council, because I've been on task forces that came up with really excellent recommendations that may not have had much impact. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge the amount of time that the stakeholders put into coming up with these recommendations, and acknowledge that they really do represent the people who have the most to gain or lose with the changes that are being considered. So I'm hoping that we can give more credence and more weight to the task forces, and that we really adopt plans and then stick to them. An important example of that is Imagine Austin. We're going to be rewriting the Land Development Code, which is going to be one of the biggest tasks before the new council, and making sure that it reflects the values from Imagine Austin is going to be absolutely critical. A lot of people spent a long time identifying those values and coming up with ways to honor them and include them. And if we don't make sure that the Land Development Code honors that and reflects those, then I think it's going to be really unfortunate.
Okay. There are a number, as you guys know, there are a number of subcommittees and boards that city council members have the pleasure of serving on, not just the regional entities. Have you guys given any thought to which boards you think you'd be most effective on? Go ahead, Mandy.
The council committees?
Yes, the council subcommittees.
Okay. I would really like to serve on Health and Human Service, and I would like to serve on the Audit and Finance committees. Those are two that really speak to me. Having graduated from the LBJ school, I am crazy about budgets. I'm one of the weird people I know who really enjoys reading budgets and scrubbing them and digging really deeply into them. So that would be a real pleasure for me. The other, as I said, is the Health and Human Service, because we have so many absolutely fabulous organizations in Austin that serve many, many human needs. And I would like to see the city strengthen those relationships so that those groups can do an even better job of serving the needs of the community.
Okay. Sherry.
You know, as a business owner for the past 35 years and having kept that business open through 3 economic up and down cycles, I look at budget and I see that perhaps the city needs to be run in a manner that mirrors a little bit more towards business owners and a business. Sound budgeting, controlling expenses. I mean, our affordability issue right now is based on a lot of non-controlling and overspending, and I think that's really important to get a handle on those. Customer service, you know, I hear that over and over again. I think we've got great city employees, but I think we need to work a little bit on customer service there. I think that the affordability issue is so substantial in this town, and it's impacted so substantially by the fact that we're not controlling expenses, and perhaps we're spending on things other than core services, which is what we need to be spending on. All of our neighborhoods are screaming for libraries that need to be improved, and potholes that need to be fixed, and parks that need to be maintained, and sidewalks that need to be built. And talking about affordability, housing is of an interest to me. So that is the other place that I would like to have an impact. It's what I've done for 35 years. We've got to maintain affordability both in a home ownership and the rental market. Over half of the people in Austin rent. And if rents go up, my children who have great jobs can't afford to buy close to where they work. So they have to lease. So we have to make sure that we manage the expenses of property owners so that they can keep those rents affordable. So that's one of the places I would really like to work.
Okay. Unfortunately, we only have time for one more, and I'm going to have to limit you guys to each 30 seconds each. At the end of your term.
Sound familiar?
At the end of your term, what is the biggest mark you would like to leave on your district? And I think you're up first, Sherry.
You know, I think being a leader that understands the responsibility of leadership is leading people in the right direction. And that means that you make thoughtful decisions, you build consensus, you listen, but you make sure that your government decisions that you make as a council member are leading the city in the right direction, and that's what a good leader does.
Okay. Mandy?
One of the marks I would like to make and sort of be remembered for is helping to shepherd the new Land Development Code. It is going to affect Austin and how it grows for the next 15, 20, 30 years. And having spent 7 years on the Planning Commission, working not only on Imagine Austin, but also the downtown plan, and working with lots of neighborhoods to develop their neighborhood plans, I think it is going to be extremely important that we reflect the values and the hard work of all the people who worked on those, and make sure that the Land Development Code is exactly what we need it to be.
Okay. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks to both of you, Mandy Dealey and Sherry Gallo. All of the runoff conversations and our conversation with the newly elected candidates for District 2, 5, and 9 will be available on YouTube. Early voting in the runoff election starts December 1st. Election Day is December 16th. For KLRU, Leadership Austin, the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life, and KUT, I'm Michael Kanan. Thanks so much for watching.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.